things out when I'm doing something like this. I like being extemporaneous. I like being wild and crazy. As some of you saw from my presentation today, I love jumping off desks. And you saw me jump here just a minute ago. No, I wasn't a cheerleader, but you know, maybe in a different kind of situation maybe I would have been. But I love IALLT, I really did. So let me go ahead and begin. Before we get to 2011, let me share some history with all of you. I hope my reasons for doing so will be clear by the end of my address. And I apologize for reading a written text, which I never do in teaching. But I also hope to share my thoughts with those not present and have written them out to share. This address will be very hard for me, and I hope not for the rest of you. As an aside, both my best friend and my father-in-law retired early at the age I turned at my last birthday. Me? I don't think so. 70? Well, that's many years away. And isn't the new late 50s the old late 30s?
Yeah.
I hope so.
You don't feel like that.
I feel like that. Anyway, in 1965, a group of individuals involved in helping support the newly ubiquitous language laboratory met somewhere, perhaps in Chicago, to create the North American Association of Language Laboratory Directors. IALLT was successful and did important work, some of which was published in its journal, to inform American foreign language pedagogy using technology. Since 1965, IALLT has morphed, just as the Language Laboratory has. By the mid-1980s, the Language Laboratory was labeled a dinosaur by many, and many language laboratories became extinct when they did not change and adapt. However, in an example of a kind of Lamarckian evolution, the strongest language laboratories became language centers of one type or another. IALLT died its own death in the 80s as well, only to be reborn. Some say at a meeting with our sister group in Japan, and became IALLT, whose acronym was originally the International Association of Learning Laboratories. And thanks to Thomas Hammond for the reminder of that. In 1989, a very much younger French professor attended the very first IALLT meeting. Well, he was.
A lot of us were a lot younger.
No, actually, the reason we were just laughing, this is a digression, is because she was talking to her children recently, and she said, well, you know, I knew Mike Ledgerwood when he was much younger. The grief given, you can imagine. Okay, going back to the text. A very much younger French professor attended the very first IALLT meeting in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Having grown up in ALM days, the pedagogy whose acronym is given both as the American Language Method and the Ideolingual Method, he grew to hate the language laboratory in his high school. He felt cloistered and cut off in the booths with the huge headphones resonant of the sound of the sea. If you want to experience this, just put your hands over your ears and try to listen. That was what it was like. All right, you got it. Thank you. In his first job, as the entire foreign language department I said, he taught Spanish and French 101 and 102 each 8 times in 2 years at the University of South Carolina at Sumter, and de facto language lab director. He bought a big boombox to replace the entire console-based language laboratory. Thus, he was an extremely unlikely candidate to become the language laboratory director at Rhodes College in 1988, actually. However, after a great deal of coercion, he took on this task since he was an untenured assistant professor. Beware. In 1989, money became available for a new language laboratory, and he had no clue about what to build. But in a deus ex machina moment, his department chair received a mailing about a meeting in Massachusetts of a group that might help with this planning and suggested that the young professor might attend that meeting. Well, he gladly agreed, and he fell in love. No, not with a person, but with an organization, its members and its knowledge. He found the female leaders of IALLT to be so cool. Sorry. and I'm a bit embarrassed to say this, but this is a generation change. He had not had really any experience with women in leadership positions at that point in his life. Just saying, some things have changed. He found especially Ruth Trometer, Tricia Dvorak, Leanne Stone, and Sue Otto to be super cool. The men were just about as cool.
Oh yeah, right.
Almost. And unlike MLA or the Semiotic Society of America, everyone in IALLT was relaxed, informal, pragmatic, and helpful. After seeing À la rencontre de Philippe, developed at MIT, and the PICS computer-controlled video discs from the University of Iowa, wow. He went back to Rhodes and built an entire language center, not lab, for this technology. Well, that language center has finally been replaced in the last year, thanks to the skill and expertise of Felix Kronenberg, one of our members, and editor of our new language center design volume. And he has a bit of proof of those years for me at Rhodes, but we're not showing those for another 2 years, all right? Yeah. Back to the story. This young professor became a professor and director of the Language Learning and Research Center at the State University of New York in 1994. He was hired to build it and have them come at Stony Brook. He did once again, thanks to IALLT and its incredible people. He attended every single IALLT meeting throughout those years, and with that dent, he is one of the 2 people who've been to every IALLT and now IALLT. And yes, he was there for that interminable meeting when this name change occurred. He's seen amazing changes. He'll never forget the email note Otmar Felsche sent him describing how Otmar had seen a demo of this new thing called the World Wide Web, and how, quote, it will change absolutely everything, end quote. Well, this young French professor is now full professor and chair of his department, in large part thanks to IALLT and his friends from IALLT. He's been part of the IALLT family all these 22 years. He's seen so much joy and so much sadness at IALLT. He's seen member friends marry, form partnerships, have children, and die. He's seen a member publicly announce he's a gay man at a conference in the early 90s. He'll never forget 3 members whom we memorialize in different ways at IALLT. Bob Henderson, whose murderer was finally arrested recently. Ursula Williams, whose remission from cancer was tragically short-lived. Anne Marie Shepard, who died young from cancer as well. And do I have stories about them and what fantastic people they were. And one of my favorite stories about Ursula, which I actually wrote down for the biography we will be giving to the next graduate student recipient of the Ursula Williams Award, is how she managed to persuade Jan Marston, now at Drake, Pete Smith, UT Arlington, Texas, to dress up in operatic outfits, gorgeous outfits from the 19th century, and do mime a Verdi opera. And they did this absolutely brilliantly, straight-faced. It was wonderful. And the key line, and forgive my singing, the key line is, "No, non voglio più servire, non voglio più servire." Right. Which means, no clapping, please. Which means, no, I don't want to serve. All of you who are language directors, yeah. I bet you don't want to serve anymore either, do you? You're happy to work with, you enjoy working with,